Health and Aging Committee. It is 8:46 on the 25th day of March, the first Thursday in spring of 2010. Madam Clerk, how many items do we have today?
There are 3 items before the committee this morning.
Great. Let's take item number 3.
And item number 3 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to an agreement with Untitled Sports and Entertainment Incorporated for the operation and maintenance of the Palisades Recreation Center Tennis Professional Concession.
Good morning.
Hi.
Emily Maeda with the Office of the CAO. Before you is the CAO report recommending the approval and execution of a contract with Untitled Sports and Entertainment for the operation and maintenance of the Tennis Professional Concession at the Palisades Recreation Center. The term of the proposed agreement is 5 years with 2 5-year options to renew. The concessionaire will pay the city 10.5% of gross receipts from tennis lessons and 12% of gross receipts from shop sales and rentals. The minimum annual rent for the concession will be $107,000 the first year, $111,000 the second year, $114,000 the third year, $115,000 the fourth year, and $118,000 the fifth year. The proposed agreement is in compliance with the city's financial policies. The CAO recommends approval. I'm available for your questions.
Great. For the record again, can you restate your name and position?
Emily Maeda with the Office of the CAO.
Great. And Emily, on this here, this is $500,000 in 5 years of rent?
Yes,
That's
minimum.
significant. Is this the number one concessionaire for tennis in the city, or do you know them individually?
I don't know if it's the number one for
But it's
the
a pretty
city.
significant, Ms. Adams, you would say it's a pretty significant rental and active center.
Yes, Councilmember. Regina Hams, Executive Officer. Yes, it is.
Good. All right, good. Any questions? Oh, no questions, Mr. Reyes? And we'll go ahead and...
I do have a question, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
one
I
question.
knew you were going to do that, Herb. Go ahead. My head is cold.
Okay.
His head is going, nothing to do with item
I
number
like that
3.
hat.
My head is really
You should
cold.
get one for all of us.
We just approved this.
It's called gravity.
It's called sliding into the home without getting dirty. Okay. Good job. Thank you very much. We'll send it on to council, right, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
And how about item number 1? We have a great, inspiring new nominee by Mayor Villaraigosa to the commission.
That's correct. And item 1 is the communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Jill Werner to the Board of Recreation and Park Commissioners.
Ms. Werner, welcome very much. This is a great opportunity to make a great impact for Los Angeles as a member of the Board of Recreation and Parks Commission. Can you tell us a little about your background? We've had a chance to have an office meeting and a visit.
Yes, we have, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm Jill Werner, and I have been involved with the Los Angeles Parks Foundation, and on the recommendation of Barry Sanders, who has put my name before you. I've lived in Los Angeles for 35 years. The parks have been an instrumental part of my living here. My kids grew up with the parks being their backyards. I took advantage of every activity, I think, possible. I came from New York City originally and grew up in an urban environment, so I was very familiar with how important parks were. And when I moved here, the park really became a way for me to meet people in the community and for my children to become part of the city. I look forward to being able to help the department in its current situation. I know there are a lot of difficult challenges that it's facing, but I hope that I can add some creative thinking and enthusiasm and moving ahead and preserving what is really a wonderful asset for this city.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to Mr. Wesson.
Yeah, I think you're fortunate to, be selected to be a commissioner for Rec and Parks. Not only is it my favorite department, it's run well. Barry is a great commissioner, and Rec and Parks is so crucial to the entire city, but I think more so in underprivileged areas, because for a lot of kids, that's all that they have. So the one thing that when I always talk about Rec and Parks, it's how they're sensitive to that and how creative they are when they try to address the needs of the areas. So have you ever served on a commission before, a city commission?
I have not. This is my first experience. Let me give you a bit of my professional background, where I run a textile rental company, which is located in the North Valley as well as in Riverside and various other places in the country. But what I wanted to bring out is that it's a union. We have union employees. It's low-income, blue-collar workers. I'm very familiar with, from that perspective, with the needs of the community that's underserved, and I hope I can bring some of my experience there to this situation.
See, when there are reductions in Rec and Park in Mr. Reyes's area and in parts of the district that I represent, our kids don't belong to country clubs.
Sure.
They're not sent away to camp for 3 weeks. All they have are the Rec and Park Center. When I was a kid growing up, my mother would give me a sandwich, and I would be at the Rec and Parks for like all day. I would come home so it is important that you have that commitment. And if you were recommended by Mr. Sanders, then that's all I need.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
First, I want to thank you for your service and your concern, and it's obvious you have a big heart in terms of how we look at the needs of our communities and our children. But one of the, I think, challenges we have, and I think Mr. Muckery has been doing his best in trying to create a big umbrella, if you will, that covers the needs of our communities, is the role of parents. And the background that you shared with us and the companies that you have, obviously you must have a great level of participation by your workers and how you create a sense of family within your company. That element of how we bring in our parents and raise our level of participation by either volunteerism or looking at the skill sets that parents have to offer or could offer, is a new direction that I think we need to stimulate or find ways to create a new sense of ownership by the parents. Do you have any concepts or ideas or any kind of, has that entered in your frame of mind yet in terms of your role as commissioner? Or is that something you would investigate or research?
Well, I think as a parent myself, and I'm very aware of how important a parent's role is, how complex it is, though, in today's world where parents are working and interaction with their children is complicated. I think that being able to have a park or a recreation program that can draw in families is very important, whether it's for a new parent group or even elder citizens as part of a interaction with their grandchildren, as an example, or
Right.
with other children in the community. I think is really vital, and I would love to work on looking into those sorts of programs and emphasizing that, because I do agree with you, it's vitally important.
Great. Just one last thought. As I read the First Lady's intent to address the issue of obesity and diabetes, and I hear about foundations and health centers that want to focus on how we engage our families, knowing that the video games and YouTube and everything that attracts a child to that screen, that keeps them from being active. I would hope our centers can become a magnet that pulls in these resources. So I talk to different entities, well, do you have this, do you have that? I'm thinking, yeah, we have that recreation and parks. Yeah, those programs exist in our parks, and how we fold in that resource base and this initiative that has been getting a lot of attention because of the First Lady's focus on that. It's something I'm hoping the commissioners could be opportunistic with and see how we can pull in those kinds of new synergies that people are speaking to. And I think that's something that we should contemplate and hopefully fold in to leverage federal funds, in as much as it deals with health. Because people think about recreation and games, and perhaps we should change the focus to health.
Right.
And that in of itself can create a different level of resource. But thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
I do, thank you.
Here's an idea, Ed. Department of Recreation and Parks, your community park and health centers.
There you go.
Good thought. Anyway, okay, we're going to recommend unanimously. It's okay with all members?
Yes.
Jill, your appointment, so we thank you.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay around for the hearing to hear a little bit more about the difficult times you're going to face with all we're going to go through to try to make the best out of this tough situation. Next item.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is item number 2, and that is a discussion on the Department of Recreation and Parks' current budget, the department's submittal for next year's budget, the impact of the early retirement program, possible restructuring of department operations, and other related matters.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to have public comment on this. Jason Elias, Scott Johnson, Stephanie Taylor, Carrie Sudkin, and Jack Foley. You could fill the chairs if you'd like. And because there's a small number of cards, we have 2 minutes per speaker.
I'm going to let Carrie go first, if that's okay.
No, I'm the chair. I want you first.
Okay,
I'll pick you
Chair.
first. I like you. If you have something to add later, you're welcome to.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank Unless you're scared to go first.
Never scared. No,
All
I've
right,
been
good
home
to
in bed for 2 days with a cold, so now I'm raring to go. I'm recharged.
All right, good. Thank
You
you.
Charge.
came here to infect the rest of them.
That's no. Now I'm completely innocuous.
So I was gonna say-
As always, council member.
I want to say thank you for the warning.
My name is Jason Elias with Service Employees International Union, Local 721. As you know, we represent about 10,000 city workers and part of the coalition of LA City Unions. Also part of the coalition that's here today, Save LA Parks Alliance, or SLAPA as it's affectionately called. And just wanted to let you know that the employees stand with the community in doing whatever we can to save our child care centers, our parks, park maintenance, our golf courses, to continue to provide, as you mentioned earlier, council member, affordable and wonderful parks that, folks in our communities don't have access to, the private, country clubs and everything else. I have just 3 things that I'm going to talk about, and folks will talk about other things. Number 1, we've talked to Councilmember Labange about the $20 million utility fee that Rec and Parks has been charged for about the past 2 years. And that fee is significantly affecting the budget of Rec and Parks. I understand that Councilmember Labange has moved a motion to try and exempt Rec and Parks from paying that $20 million. Our idea is actually to ask DWP to allow Rec and Parks to use that $20 million to go towards water conservation efforts, and which will save a lot of money, and then also to help the child care centers. Number 2, golf. We fully support a golf enterprise fund. We just asked the council and the mayor's office to include the golfers, the community, and the employees in that discussion. And then lastly, council member, you've championed the green retrofit workforce development program. We're hoping to get about $30 million of stimulus funds to go towards that, and we just ask that you guys do everything you can to utilize that $30 million to go towards green retrofits of our parks and maintaining our employees in the parks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if you have anything later to contribute, please let the chair know. Scott Johnson?
Yes. My name is Scott Johnson. I am here today working with the SLAPA Coalition, but I also wear many hats. I'm an employee with the department. I'm a community advocate. I've spoken before this committee before. My thoughts are here today is to stand behind both the workers of the department, the management of the department, but also the community members who utilize our parks. Our parks and their employees are first responders. We're first responders in the sense that we are working with the youth of our community, the adults, the seniors. We are the first to see children who use our parks who may be straying to a life of gangs and so forth. We, in a sense, our programs are in a sense the prevention and the intervention tools that are needed to work with our youth. My thoughts here is growing up, I grew up in the Ramona Gardens Housing Project. I was a park brat, Mr. Weston, we can relate to that. People like Clarence Palmer's, the Ray Wantas, people who, I know Clarence is still with the department, I think Ray Wantas retired. Those are the people that were at the centers that provided the programs that steered myself, in the right direction. What my concern is as a community member is that if drastic cutbacks are made in the department, you're losing a first-line source of first responders, okay? The employees in the department are trained to offer the quality service and programs in a sense that are going to be the first layer of line of defense and preventing our youth from straying into a life of gang and crime. One other trend I'm troubled to speak about here today is also the politicization of this department. We need to make sure that the professionalism and the training are paramount number one in this department, and not having other organizations look upon our human assets and our park resources as some sort of tool for other political agendas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's have Stephanie Taylor.
Yes. Good morning. I'm Stephanie Taylor from the Green LA Coalition, also representing the Verde Coalition and a member of the Save LA Parks Alliance as well. Good morning, and thank you all for actually being champions for parks. I sort of feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but I want to, though, emphasize that in order to, if we acknowledge, and that I think that you do, that parks are critical services and important for the quality of life and public safety and all that, I think we just have to demonstrate that we are indeed sort of looking at every single alternative and looking under every rock. And I think SLAPA, we've put together a list of possible alternatives. We don't know, what the intricacies are, but we're willing to put them forward, work with the city to explore feasibility and all of that. I did want to, though, sort of mention that this is a long-term problem, and we need a long-term solution. So one of the things that we're, Verde Coalition and the SLAPA, we're looking at laying the groundwork for a long-term solution, a local revenue source. So we're going to be commissioning a study and looking at possible revenue sources, and we'll be inviting the city to join with our effort once we, do the study and look at sort of what the alternatives are. So we know that this is going to take, maybe a year or two. But I think we need to get started now and sort of demonstrate sort of the criticalness of recreation and park services, and not let the dialogue go in the direction that this is a luxury that we can sort of put off to another day, because we all know that it's critical, and we have to do everything we can to make sure that parks and recreations are adequately funded. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We have Carrie Sutkin.
Good morning. It's good to see the new members of this committee. I know many of you are working, former staff that are really willing to get into the details of solving the problem. I'm representing People for Parks and also the Save LA Alliance, Save LA Parks Alliance. People for Parks is kind of working to include brothers and sisters from union, from environmental groups, from inner city urban parks programs. AYSO is here. We have the community health councils that's working with us, and every member organization of this alliance has a creative solution to really help partner with the city, from AYSO partnering with soccer, and Brent will talk to you about that, to the community health councils that have been very successful in getting federal funding for public health, for healthy living, and they'll want to talk to you about that later. People for Parks has, you know, some old-time policy people and consultants who know the city, and we're familiar with some of the opportunities for funding, what we call realignment of funding, council members, where we don't just assume that there's going to be a general fund subsidy for parks because it's the right thing to do, because we know today the general fund just doesn't have the money to subsidize the department. So what we'd like to talk to you about are very specific, what I call realignment strategies, where we could really look to see what is the parks doing and what other funding sources could we get for that. Let's say if we have amazing park programs in housing authority properties, on federally owned properties, why couldn't we ask the feds to help us subvene those funds? We have parks in business improvement districts. Why couldn't we ask those business improvement districts to help us, at least with O&M and et cetera? We've spent some time, we've been working on this for a couple of years, but seriously since October, and I have a package for you that kind of summarizes that.
Keep going. Finish your sentence.
Okay, so in October, we convened a really important summit. Many of you were there. Tom was there. Supervisor Molina was there. Many of you had staff people there. And we collected an excellent, we think, list of ideas and recommendations. And we've been working to kind of refine those and polish them. We've been studying up on the Rec and Parks budget. It's a difficult tool, though, that Rec and Parks budget. It's been difficult for us as outsiders to understand the true revenues and the true costs. So, you know, we can help as much as we can, and we would like to.
Good, this is good to review this. Appreciate that greatly.
Thank you.
Alina Boki? Alina, I mispronounced your last name, right? And Brent? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Members, my name is Alina Bokte. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. We are a nonprofit organization that builds parks and community gardens in low-income neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles. We have, since our inception in 2002, we have worked very closely with the Department of Recreation and Parks to bring not only parks and community gardens into low-income neighborhoods, but to provide much-needed services. And so we want to stress the importance of the relationship with the department and what a critical role the department plays in terms of supporting organizations such as ours in order to be able to deliver its mission of helping address the park disparity issue. So significant loss of resources and funding to the department would not only impact the department and all of the other issues related to that, but also direct services to the community, as well as the infrastructure that nonprofits and other providers have out in the community as we look at continuing to provide these important services. And so the impact is not only to the department itself, but to all of the much broader, I think, infrastructure that supports parks and community gardens. So just want to make sure that that's stressed. I know that there are proposals in front of you, and again, we support, I think, a much deeper look into how it is that the department can truly receive funds from other services or other departments that are providing some similar services. And so I definitely urge you to look at those. And then I will end with just saying that the Land Trust, I think, as other organizations here before you, are here to work in partnership with the city. We understand you are facing very difficult times, and so we urge you to prioritize funding for the department, because now is definitely not the time to diminish resources with the fact that, there's such a rise in obesity and diabetes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Brent Whittlesey, is that correct? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Juanita DeLomes, and also Jack Foley. And we'll hold his card for later if he's not here this time. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. LaBonge and other council members. My name is Brent Whittlesey. I'm a volunteer with the American Youth Soccer Organization. We've talked about that in your office a couple times. I'm here today because our organization doesn't want to have the city's financial problems affect the ability of kids to play. So what I'm here today to say is that if the department has to cut soccer programs at the rec centers around the city, they just don't have the staff to run those programs, AYSO will put soccer programs in the rec centers where they're needed. So we think that we have the volunteer base and the capability of bringing youth soccer into the parks to prevent the loss of that opportunity to kids. And I know that there are many, many youth centers around the city that have youth soccer programs. We have about 5,000 volunteers in the city of Los Angeles, and we can recruit more and help out in that way. So as far as I know, this hearing today is about concrete proposals for preserving recreation opportunities in the face of the city's budget situation, and that is our proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Juanita.
Good morning. Juanita DeLomas. I represent the largest ethnic group in the city of Los Angeles, the Latinos. Okay? I've lived all my life, 81 years in the city of Los Angeles, and I've paid my property tax because I've lived in the same house since 1939. I've been involved with Rec and Parks Department for the past 30 years. I've served not only on the Echo Park Advisory Board, I've served on the MacArthur Park Advisory Board, and I've served on the Hazard Park Advisory Board. And I must emphasize how important our recreation centers are to the youth of the community. And I speak to you not only for the youth, but for the seniors. I not only represent the Sierra Club for Environment, and people forget that our urban parks are our open space environment. And because it also has senior centers. And as an 81-year-old AARP member, for the past 25 years, we need our recreation centers. They serve us well. And to cut our budgets and to close what I understand are 30 recreation parks, centers, is a horrendous idea. Okay? So I appreciate your time, but please, we don't want to send the kids in the summertime out into the streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Vendick.
Thank you. I am Stephanie Vendig, and I am president of the Griffith Park Adult Community Club at the Griffith Park Adult Community Center, which is the latest community senior center in LA. We have been open since 2008. We too, as your former speaker said, are very distressed with the idea that there will be skilled and experienced people who are the facility directors, the recreation coordinators, will be diminished, and therefore the quality programming that has been in this department is seriously threatened. For seniors, which is a growing population, in fact, yesterday I heard that LA has the largest growing older adult population in the United States. And the baby boomers, which all of you may be part of, will be descending upon. LA needs a high-quality senior program as part of recreation and parks. But it also must be considered that there are need for resources besides the recreation part. And there needs to be a closer integration, from our point of view, between the Department of Aging and the federal funds of the Older Americans Act to include with the running operation of a senior center. I will stop there at that moment.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We appreciate that. We have one card. Mr. Foley is coming on the freeway, so we're going to hold that. If I could ask the Department of Recreation and Parks staff, they would like to come up. But first, Mark Brown, come up and explain what is the guaranteed Oh, excuse me, hold a second. Mr. Reyes?
Mr. Chair, we were hoping to ask questions of the speakers after they finish speaking.
Oh, if you want, yeah, that's all right. We got a little time, John. I'm sorry. You can continue your meeting.
I do have...
Hold on a second. Here's a question. Mr. Reyes has a question for one of our speakers.
The representatives from the Save LA Parks, are you still here? Carrie, you want to come on up? First, I want to thank Carrie. We've been working together since the early 90s, building all our parks in the inner city, and I thank you, and I'm very appreciative of your role today in terms of harnessing all that talent and experience in addressing this crisis. One of the questions I wanted to ask you and hopefully get some insight, has there been any dialogue regarding the notion of security and working with police amongst the groups that you are speaking to? I think the notion of how priorities are being assembled in the city when 70% of our budget is dedicated to sworn personnel, police and fire, the interplay between existing personnel and hoping that we can generate resources to maintain our levels of employment in our park department. But that's a far reach at this moment. So given that struggle, has there been that discussion with the police and or the role of the city's personnel in dealing with parks? Has that discussion occurred, or is it occurring?
You know, some of the members, councilmen, work very closely with the Rampart Division, for example, Juanita,
Right.
and she's been kind of giving him the heads up on what it looks like is going to be happening with the recreation centers, and they're very concerned about the effects. So to that extent, I think we have, you know, the police department in support of our position, but to go the next step and actually for us to ask you to, you know, reduce public safety funding, to shift it to parks, you know, we're afraid that that might have a backlash on us too. We're not against public safety. You know, we know the importance of police and fire in the
Right.
city's budget, you know,
Reflects
arrangement.
that, yeah.
But I have to tell you, I mean, personally, when I worked for the county supervisor, there were arrangements with the sheriff's department. The sheriffs had a youth athletic league, and there were times when we needed them to come in, and they did provide some of the programming. It's more expensive than Rec and Park staff, but
But they're budgeted for that.
they're budgeted for that, and, you know, a uniformed gentleman or lady,
Being a referee doesn't sound too good, you know.
you know, but they serve like three purposes because
Right.
they're security and recreation and that kind of social worker. And so,
Right.
you know, there is a benefit to having those positions come in. We've mentioned that to the Parks Department, and I've mentioned it to the President of the Parks Commission too. So, you know, I think we need a little help inside the city.
But I also feel there should be different voices. There has to be different stakeholders who have the ability to articulate those points of view, so that if we're going to go in that direction, it's coming from different bases, if you will. And I just needed to ask that question, because I know that weighs heavy on my mind in terms of how we're looking at our resources and having to redefine and restructure our roles to meet these gaps and to create a multiplicity of benefits with these different positions. So that's just a discussion that I think it needs to be a healthy one. It can be one in which we reinforce silos, but actually start intertwining how we leverage what we have and how we create these different perspectives.
I need to butt in here because, quite honestly, we are working with LAPD. I've met with both Chief Bratt when he was a police chief and Charlie Beck, now that he's police, Earl Pastinger. We're looking at their PAL leagues becoming part of our program. In fact, they're doing a number of their programs in our parks right now for that very reason. We're leveraging their expertise in working with youth, and they provide that security in our parks even as we speak today. We hope to expand that going forward. It's a model I hope to make across the city. It's part of our long-term strategic plan as we go forward, is to work with our various other agencies,
Right.
primarily LAPD.
Well, gangs are very sophisticated these days, and they're reading the paper. It's not like they can't read. And so, like, in Taylor Yard, we have a 40-acre park, and to maintain its security is going to be a challenge. We have other parks, the cornfields in Chinatown and Vista Hermosa, and I'm getting, when I visit the park, I just drop in, and families will tell me, well, group of guys came in with a car and they parked over here, they did this and that, and I tell them, well, look, just call 911 if it is an emergency, if someone's getting hurt, or call 311, or call my office, and I'll give them my number, but let's get somebody there. And everyone's stressed thin. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I think as time goes on, if this gap continues, I need to find ways to respond. So I'm very, very appreciative of what you just said, because I think it speaks to how we start looking at different roles. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sutcliffe. Any other speakers there? Very good. All right, so at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Muckery and his team to return to the table. But first, Mark Brown, please explain the charter section funding so that we all know exactly the level of it. And I made a mistake. I used to explain it was guaranteed by the property tax, but is guaranteed by the general fund.
Well, that's correct, Councilmember. Every year in the budget, there is a general fund amount set aside to the Recreation and Parks Fund that is equivalent to the assessed value, a percentage of the assessed value of property tax in the city. So it's not directly from the property tax, but it's an amount derived from the assessed value of property in the city that is placed in the budget of the Department of Recreation and Parks in their fund on an annual basis.
And if we learn from the county, they have reassessed several parcels, so that fund may go down, right?
Well, it could go down or it
could go up.
It could go up. At the current time, it appears it will be going down.
And prior to 1998, was this in the budget, in the charter?
It would, yeah.
It always existed.
Yes, it's been in the charter, yeah.
Since
It's been in the
1925.
charter of the city.
The reforming of
since
the modern
since the
charter.
department was established, yes.
Mr. Brown, thank you very much.
Sure, my pleasure.
And Mr. Muckery, if we have one handout from Recreation and Parks, and I'm sure you have some charts. If you
I
could
do,
take as
and
much time as you need.
We'll be
and give us
referring
the-
to that. Unfortunately, Regina Adams, we have another budget hearing with the mayor in about 35 minutes, so I will stay, but Regina may be getting up and leave. It's not because she wants to leave, it's because we have another commitment.
Mr. Chair, real quick before John starts, you should know before she leaves that she was magnificent in council last week, and I just wanted to say that to you, and I wanted her to be here to hear it. And I told her that. She was magnificent.
And I want to thank you for that, too. I actually got an early warning that we were going to be called. I was in Washington, D.C., trying to get money. I was meeting with the Department of Justice at the time. I actually left, dialed into council phone, and I echo your sentiments. On a very short notice, she represented this city, the employees, very well. So I want to thank her, and she's just been just a strength in this troubling time. First off, I want to thank the committee for having us come here, and I want to thank each one of you for what you've been saying in council over the last few weeks. We're in terrible time. No general manager wants to come in front of this body or any body, community groups, and say, we're going to cut programs. That's the very last thing we want to do. But we've been facing this difficult task for over 3 years. This department has been taking cuts. I also don't think you or the mayor has been given enough credit for finding positions on a human level to move displaced employees into fully funded positions. I have been in the public service for over 35 years. I've never seen that level of dedication. Obviously, not everybody's going to find that lifeline, but I really, truly believe you are not getting the credit you deserve for making this happen. And I want to thank you for doing that. On the flip side, as we find people and we put them in fully funded positions, that reduces our flexibility. It's fine. We agree it. I'm going to go for, we're going to make this happen. I'm a little disappointed in the amount of misinformation out in the city right now. We're not closing any rec centers. We have no intention of closing rec centers. We have been reducing programs over the last 3 years. None of you have heard any real complaints. Yes, a few hours here, we've been moving programs, but 3 years ago, I had over 2,100 full-time positions. I had 8,000 part-time positions. We have 24,000 volunteers. We have over 400 relationships with other groups, nonprofits, LA Unified, and putting on programming. Today, over the last 3 years, we're cut, and we've been cut. If you look at a couple of those slides, you'll see the ethnic breakdown of recreation and parks. Our recreation park truly reflects the character of this city on every level. These men and women work where they live. They're part of the fabric of that community. And we must never forget that. For over 100 years, this department has been putting on programming for the citizens of LA. We are the national leaders across the board. Our department was found on subsidizing programs. That's why we get a boxed amount, like the libraries, for these type of services. Hey, we're under stress now. We have a $400 million plus deficit next year. We have to do something. 85% of my budget is labor. Now, if anybody can figure out how to make cuts without affecting labor, I want to know about it. We welcome anybody coming to us. Right now, as we've been announcing some cuts in licensed child care, we've been actually getting people that are saying, hey, we want to help. How can we help? We've contacted them. We are willing to open the doors to enter into agreements as long as they provide the same level and quality of service. If you look at one of those maps to the right, we are focusing on income levels and demographics. That's where we're going to have to contract into. Our programming has to go into the areas of greatest need. It's an equity issue. And that's why a few years ago I was criticized for putting in $700,000 into GIS technology. I can now map you using real data where we need to do it, where our rec centers are, where our gyms are, where our pools are. That's the tools we didn't have 3 years ago. We have them now. Unfortunately, we don't have the money going across. 3 years ago, Councilmember LaBonge and I fought very hard to get a position in Rec and Parks. It was a management position. He fought the good fight. We got the position. Almost immediately said, Tom, I'm not going to fill that position. In good conscience, I cannot fill management positions while looking ahead, I knew we were going to be cutting labor. So I didn't cut it. Tom and I had a very heated debate. I think we understand now that it was all revenue generated. That decision had to be made. It's either 3 full-time or 6 to 8 part-time employees or 1 superintendent at Griffith Park. It's not one as a critical, it's one of a core function. Where should we be putting our efforts and money?
Just for the record, it was a superintendent of Griffith Park, which was previously an assistant general manager of Griffith Park, in trying to get oversight of the 4,212 acres and its facilities. That person who has that job now handles all the rec centers in your neighborhood. We're trying to lighten their load so they could look at a bigger picture of a large, massive park and their facilities, and also have another person focus on the rec center needs. But as John said, we took one for the team there and hope one day in good times we could come back for that needed position.
And we agree with that. Any cuts, proposed cuts or real cuts we need to do these scalable so in the good times we can immediately ramp up. And that's what my goal is in anything we do going forward. I've been criticized also on management. I didn't take any layoffs in management. That's not true. I have 21 positions in upper level management, less than 1% of the entire labor force. We
now have 20% reduction in the management for recreation and parks due to the retirements that recently occurred.
And then we have the second level. There's another tier below the level that is about 40%. And you go below that is another 20 to 30%, all 3 years. We managed our management layoffs through normal retirements and the early retirement program. So right now, I will stand up in any group at any level, and I will be happy to show where my management team is and the cuts we took and why. Now, 3 years ago, I took over 55 cuts in grounds maintenance. Everybody said, well, what is a ground maintenance? Big deal. They're not mowing blowers. These men and women go out, they clean restrooms, and they rake play pits. When was the last time anybody in this room heard Rec and Parks had an injury due to foreign objects in our play pits? Never. Not on my watch, not now, not in the future. We're going to protect the kids. Now, other municipal governments have. You can go to Orange County and you found nails in their play pits, syringes, animal feces. I will promise you again, your kids will be safe when they play in our parks. That's all I can do. But let's face it, we have a difficult task ahead of us. The easy decisions have all been made. In the last few years, let me tell you what we've done, just so you know. No paddle boats. Remember that was a big deal 3 years ago. No salute to recreation, the number one party we have in the valley for residents. No Lotus Festival. We stopped subsidizing special events. We eliminated some early morning daycare programs. And you're going to see the biggest change coming forward. Golf this year will not be getting 1 cent of subsidized money. Not 1 cent from the general fund, my fund, your taxpayer dollars will go to subsidize golf. It's going to be standalone operation, and that's going to mean green fees will increase. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get 2,000 or 3,000 golfers that are going to be very upset. To me, that's a discretionary recreation activity. We want to provide it. Those who want to play will have to pay the freight. I'm sorry. These are the decisions we're going to have to make. I'm also just returned from Washington.
Mr. Chair, but, John, I recognize if you raise fees a quarter, we're going to get complaints.
Correct.
But I've always told you, and I've told Ward, that we undercharge. So, I mean, it is what it is. So, from me personally, you'll get no pushback. So I would be supportive of that, and I'd like to see the details as you begin to vet them. So,
I just went to Washington, D.C., and I met with the Department of Justice, Department of Interior, Department of Labor, as well as many of our Congress members. One thing we don't do well in this city, I need to have a group that just focuses on external funding sources and partnerships. And I met with Pete McPhail, who is AYSO, Brett, you know him, and he made the same commitment to me in Washington, D.C. We are willing to come into your parks and put on park programming and soccer. And this is the way we're going to have to go in the future. We're going to have to look for these type of broad partnerships to put our programming in the parks. The last thing we want to do, as people for parks, and we agree, we do not want to abandon any of our parks. We cannot allow that to happen.
Let me just ask a specific question on the issue. You mentioned Pals earlier, working with Chief Beck and former Chief Bratton. Hollywood Division is located at Fountain and Cahuenga. At Cahuenga and Santa Monica Boulevard is the Hollywood Recreation Center. Take that, for instance. What would you envision of a standard rec center, which in the future, as hours are going to be challenged and reduced, how do you staff that and then continue some program? Let's say ASYO wants to go in there and run a soccer program, fine. But how does the lights get turned on? How does it get cleaned up? How does it get maintained? Who's responsible? And the pals come down.
No, we, the city Department of Recreation and Parks, will always have some level of presence in all our parks and rec centers. We can never completely abandon it. I will use the model that we're doing at Lafayette Park with Hearts of Los Angeles. I will use the model that we're doing at Expo Center with the Expo Board. We actually have groups putting on programming in our parks, but we will never abandon that responsibility. We can't. When was the last time you saw a lawsuit against us for anything to do with an injury to a child, a molestation of a child? We haven't had it. We will always maintain that level of vigilance. The right question that you asked is, how are you going to do programming in the future? I made a commitment to the mayor, I'll make a commitment to you. This summer, we will continue to put on the same level of programming we did last year. Now, there will be some cuts.
Mr. Murphy, I hate to interrupt you, but before you go there, because it's a very important topic, but I do have a question when you refer to your visit to Washington and the city's ability to have a coordinated message when we go to D.C. I find that in different departments, you have different approaches to the same people. So I'm having a conversation with the Department of Interior myself. I have Department of Water and Power having a conversation with the same departments. There's got to be a point where both you, for the River Master Plan, we're talking to the Department of Transportation, EPA, and HUD, as well as the Army Corps. Now, I just want to, this is food for thought. This is something you and I need to maybe in a different venue, but I keep trying to leverage what we have that are our natural strengths. Our parks are wonderful watershed players in the region. How we double up or triple our roles in this one place with Department of Water and Power, Department of Interior, health issues, and sending that focused message so that they know over in D.C. that we have a team approach.
Correct.
So I'm just hoping that the conversations get synchronized. We have some level of synchronicity that allows us to be that much more sharper and competitive when it comes to these grants. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. I just needed to share that thought with you because...
I'll tell you, that is music to my ear. We don't go to D.C. without checking with our legislative people in the mayor's office. 2 years ago, if you recall, the Congress took a very dim view of parks. In fact, all their ARA bills precluded from parks for participating in any reinvestment money. This year, it seems to be flowing a little closer, but I agree that...
But believe me, I see the mayor as a partner, I do. If our executive, our city does not succeed, the city will not succeed.
Correct.
So I am very much in tune with that line of thinking. But I also know I have not had the opportunity to have that conversation with his staff. So I'm doing my work, and we need to coordinate this, and so together, we're finally at a place where we're doing that. So I just need for us to sharpen that message and be coordinated.
I could not agree more. But I wanted to say the mood, it seems to be in Washington. I took the Jerry Maguire approach when I went there, because I know that this administration wants to do something in the urban environment. So I said, help me help you. If you tell me what you're looking at, come to L.A., visit our rec centers, our parks. The First Lady, move up. We're willing and able to put on this type of program. We need their help. Right now, they're formulating their ideas. And so we didn't go there with a set agenda saying we want A, B, and C, and D. I asked them, what do you have on, what do you need us to support you? And we'll be working with you and this administration to make a single voice message.
Well, last week we had 6 Congress members in one meeting.
Yes.
We had their staff there. We had the Army Corps. We had DOT. We had the county, all in one room.
That's perfect.
And we were reviewing the park capacity of the riverfront district that the city controls in coordination with the county. And the county was there with us. So it could happen, it has happened. The question is, how do we as city family coordinate that message? Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is I think there's a shift in Congress right now towards the urban environment.
Yeah.
Where 2 years ago, don't ask us, we're not giving, we're not ready to support parks or community projects. Right now they are. Some of the questions are, I've come to this committee, and again, I heard somebody say it best, it's like preaching to the choir. In order for us to be good administrators, we need to put on ourselves good ancestors. We know the issues that have plagued this city for years, park poor, park areas. Mike Schull has developed a map with various agencies to show where we are. I want to thank this committee for endorsing our efforts to continue to add land to our inventory, to continue to add park space, and to go after grant funding with the state of California with their Prop 84. If we're going to make changes, tactically, I have to look at this year and next. Strategically, I have to look at myself as a great-great-great-grandfather and having our great-great-great-grandkids playing in these parks. So I want to thank you for understanding that. One thing that we as a city have not really come to grips with is we know we have problems. We know there are going to be a reduction in the workforce. That's easy. I mean, those are raw numbers. Those are just numbers. X employees means X million dollars. We haven't come to grips with what are the core functions. What are those functions that we deem necessary that we should be providing on a day-to-day basis while this economy is in a tailspin? And that's what I want. I'm pleased that we're having this discussion. I want to work with you individually, collectively, and work with all the friends groups that go forward. So that's really the message I want to give to you.
So is that complete your report at this point?
Correct.
Okay, so Mr. Reyes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We recently met with 40 parents at the Downey Child Care Center, and they were very much opposed to the shutting down of a licensed child care program. But we shared with them that we're going through a series of changes, and change will occur, but we need to, I committed to them that would answer these questions. And their fear is that the city staffers will not provide the same level of care for the children as the licensed child care providers. They believe that the quality of transportation and the food will also suffer because of that change. given their status. They were concerned with the revised hours of operation will negatively impact on their own working schedules, given these changes. In the end, they wanted me to advocate for their childcare positions, and so these are the questions I need to pose, because it's something I agreed to do with them. And I want to thank Jose Gardet for my staff, because he was very key in making sure that these issues were addressed. It appears that a disproportionate number of layoffs were targeted within the child care program. Was this decision simply based on fiscal factors, or were there other factors involved?
There's a number of factors that go into any layoff process. Again, it goes down to the basic question, what is a core function of the Department of Recreation and Parks? That doesn't mean child care is not critical. Is that a core function for Recreation and Parks as we go forward? We also looked at the participation level in licensed child care. Now, we have a number of other programs, preschools and youth development programs. There were about a little over 900 kids registered in a program at 26 sites. That was costing the city, out of our budget, $7 million to put on. That's not, those are direct expenses. Revenue generated was $2 million. So we looked at participation levels, we looked at, is it a core function, we looked at a lot of fun, and can we absorb these 900 kids into other existing programs?
But that does beg the question, would the parents ever approach about increasing their share of costs in order to keep their centers open?
We can do that, most assuredly,
But
but right now,
but realistically, they were not at this point.
realistically, they were not, and I'll tell you why. When we went out and we looked at what private providers were doing, it's about $1,200 a month, and we may be charging $200 to $250 a month. So
Right.
to think that these same poor working families can make that quantum leap, we can most assuredly do that. I will be happy to meet with any group, but I'm just telling you that the sheer numbers, they would be shocked at what the real cost is.
And believe me, there's a pretty big number on a monthly basis, and I've used it before, I just can't remember it right now. But when we look at strategies, did we ever consider a cluster model where the department would shift resources from low attendance centers to centers with high capacity?
We can look at, we are actually the first department to recommend clustering. I don't think we have for licensed child care, and I'll tell you why. The gun was cocked and fired real quick on layoffs.
Okay.
So what we had to do, our fair share of layoffs in the first 1,000 was 125. That's 12.5% of all the city layoffs, or I should say positions that were targeted for elimination, filled positions, general fund, 12.5% occurred in our department.
So let's just take Downey for an example. You have an 80% or more of capacity. Would you consider looking at a greater financial commitment from the parents, since you have such a strong sense of support for that center and you have such a high level of attendance? Is that something that would be in your radar? Would you consider that?
I'll be happy to personally meet with the Downey people on this issue and look at all the other solutions that we can go forward. Obviously, the issue is the issue is much bigger than 900 kids.
I understand.
It's this reducing the city's structural deficit going forward. But I'm not just going to look at our staff providing it. If there's, and I hope somebody out there is listening, if there's a qualified service provider that is willing to come into our centers, I will enter into meaningful dialogue at any level, at any park, for any program.
Okay. So, and I appreciate that, I really do, Mr. Mukri. You touched on this before, and I just want to revisit this under this context. In regards to the Water and Power water bill issue and its impact on your department's budget, perhaps Water and Power and Recreation and Parks can work together to develop a plan that allows Recreation and Parks to lessen the payment if a park and a rec center also has a child care program. Under this scenario, the money saved and not having to pay for the water could perhaps be reverted to a child care program. And I know that begins to affect the whole structural issue, but is that something we could pursue, or do you think is even worth engaging?
Any way we can reduce my must-pays, equates to dollars, that equates to labor, that equates to programs.
Okay.
So yes, the simple answer is any way I can reduce my cost of operations will transcend into greater programming and could in fact mean at a much needed low income based on demographics, we would have a child care center open. Remember, I've told you this, it's not going to be a straight line cut across, it's going to be very sawtooth, with areas of greatest need getting the greatest interest in programming. And you just have to work with me, I'll work with you, I'll work with the community to make this happen.
Well, then, what I'll commit to is that my staff and I will work with you to see if we can tailor this relationship with Water and Power.
Perfect.
And see if there are other opportunities then in which we could begin to look at how we define that balance. And like you said, in every geographic area you'll have different strengths and weaknesses. We have to find the strengths and see how they can fit together.
That's great.
And I'll work with you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. I have had meetings with Jim McDaniels, the head of water over there. He has met with Mr. Muckery in the field. They've created partnerships to try to be able to continue the workforce and take that water and power money to lower the number of gallons of water that DWP. How much water have you reduced?
Over the last, and Mike Schuler is going to probably look at me askance because I feel we're not getting full credit for the water we've reduced. Our program started long before the drought ordinance. So we're in excess of 30% less water usage in our parks than we were before the drought ordinance came in. And it's through smart irrigation, reclaimed water, and watering days.
Is there a water meter at every park?
Yeah, pretty much. There's
But is there a master meter like at Griffith Park, or is there a
lot of parks have numerous meters. It depends on the development of the park over the years and how that was done. But most parks have more than one meter.
Mr. Mucker, I prepared some questions, but the CLA here, I want to ask you, your mid-year report shows a $4.3 million shortfall right now?
I'm sorry?
The CAO mid-year financial status states that the Department of Recreation and Parks has projected a general fund deficit of $4.3 million right now. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what report they're referring to. We recall the city's financial management information system really is a lagging system. It's a batch-loaded system. Regina and I look on this in real time. We will not have a deficit at the end of this fiscal year. We
Okay.
will not have a deficit in this department.
Very good. That's very good. Now, in restructuring and reimbursement of the general fund for its costs, yesterday in City Council, the day before in City Council, there were representatives of the consulting group that was dealing with water and power issues, and I tried to say, I believe the transfer from water and power to the city is that of in lieu of property taxes. They're a government entity, they don't pay property taxes. The a consultant did reference the term a franchise fee in lieu of, that is typical in that. You have many water and power facilities on or near or around your parks. Do you see that as a franchise-free fee?
Everything is open. Water lines, electricity lines, gas lines. We're going to have to look at ways that we are getting reimbursed for their use of our properties. So the simple answer is yes. It's being borne out of necessity now, but maybe that's the right way to go.
But they already have, that's what they consider the transfer, like the river supply conduit from North Hollywood through Griffith Park to feed the city, is they're already paying that. That's how they've assumed it, but it's never been talked that way, and I've always felt that it should be talked in those terms at all. Have you seen, or familiar with business improvement districts?
Yes.
Do you think we could make community improvement districts where we can go to the community and say, this is a menu of things that if you want to, again, raise revenue from their own, that we could create community improvement districts and still meet your very important objective of equity?
The answer is yes. We have a very vibrant Parks Foundation that's working with us. We kind of adopt the park program. It's not just a menu of those most affluent parks. If you adopt one, you're going to adopt two or three. The two or three are going to be in those areas where the community cannot afford that sort of adoption, or there is not the industry base to do that. So very definitely we are looking at that.
Okay, and the other thing too I wanted to say, the council's not gonna, and I don't believe you're gonna stand for any closures of parks on weekends, is that correct?
We're looking at keeping parks open when the people are using the parks. That's why I said this summer, we're going to keep it open. As we go forward, we're going to have to pay the bill for this because we, quite honestly, will not have a 7-day-a-week operation after September. It'll be some mix of some parks, but no parks will be closed.
I got it, but recreation centers, this is the
Recreation
question.
centers will be closed, but we also...
We're on weekends.
We're going to look at weekends and holidays and keeping track of our area of the greatest need.
To keep them open.
To keep them open.
And do we have an hour rate of a typical gym?
We created an hour rate for a typical gym being large, medium, and small. Vicki Israel has been working diligently on that. We can provide that to you, yes.
We can provide that to
Do you have it now?
Excuse me, Tom?
No, I do not have the final.
Mr. Chair, I think you'll appreciate this. Lincoln Heights had this Main Street on Broadway clock that was built in the
Historic one.
historic
Yeah.
1930s.
Right, on the north side of the street.
There you go, right,
Right.
you know exactly where it's at. Well, today it begins to work again.
And you gotta get there.
And so I gotta be there like in 10 minutes, but.
All right, good.
Yes, it is a clock, but symbolic to what Lincoln Heights has gone through, and now their clock is ticking, so.
Know that my mother saw it when she grew up in Lincoln Heights, so it's special as the world's connected. Mr. Reyes, thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
On the issue, though, of, let's say this summer, we anticipate everything in summer, the camps, the programs that we have, the pools, with the exception of those pools that are mechanically challenged, will be open. But there will be, your management team will be scrubbing the numbers with the CAO to see how you go forward once school is back in session in September.
That's correct.
But at that time, would you commit to this committee, now of one, that you will always be open on a Saturday and a Sunday when the people are? I know we had a discussion yesterday about the libraries. The libraries do bonus their employees who work on Sunday. That's a cost that's affected to that. The Central Library and I believe 8 regional libraries. Do you have to bonus your employees to work on Sunday?
What we can do, okay, in our situation, and we have to work with the various labor unions that represent our employees, but we would need to modify some of our employees' work hours. We also have a lot of part-time employees, which will not be affected by that. But for the full-time employees, if they're needed to work, you know, they probably more than likely would have to change their work schedule, which could include a weekend day.
But there is no bonus in our department.
Right, for the Pan Pacific Director, if they work on a Sunday, it's the same as they work on a Tuesday.
We've actually been working with the unions very diligently, both the ASME and SEIU, on this very subject because we're all aware we're going to have less people. We're going to have to modify our work schedule. People are going to have to do more. We're going to have to broaden classifications and stay within the budget.
Well, now, when you mention broad classification, that's not something that's done overnight or over a 90-day period.
I would imagine if you talk to 95% of my employees are working out of class right now.
Oh, I got that. I understand that. But, I mean, if we go to try to officially make it. As you go forward, the structure of your department was, as you said, formed 1925, but also enhanced in 1947, I believe, when the Department of Playgrounds and the Department of Parks became together as such. Is there any restructuring that you think you'll have to look at all these positions? Because as a general manager, if you were Tommy Lasorda, you turn to your bench and you don't know who's there because people are e-ripping it or early retirement or going to other opportunities and other city departments, and all of a sudden you don't know when your team is set. When is the team to be set? By June 1st or what time?
We have a pretty good idea going forward right now. Those positions we will have retained. We also know those positions that will be going fully within our department, like golf will be now fully reimbursable. Harbor positions are fully reimbursable. We know today. What I do not know is the next 3,000 positions that will be eliminated. And let's not mince words. I don't know what our fair share is.
Your citywide hit.
The citywide hit. So we are now making plans around. Let's go through raw numbers. Beginning of this fiscal year, I had to keep 300 positions vacant from my about 2,100 authorized. We lost 280 during the early retirement incentive program. Another 125 positions will be eliminated through the layoff process. We also transferred 20 people into other agencies and other reimbursements. So Now I know exactly what my pool of employees are. I mentioned flexibility. Because now they're fully reimbursed from a specialized fund, I cannot move those people now. So even though they're employed, they're doing a great job in a great area, I can't take somebody from the harbor and move them to the valley. So now we're looking at the clustering, we're looking at work schedules, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot clearer now than it was about 2 weeks ago.
But that takes you down to about 1,300 employees from 2,100 right now on that issue. On the issue of, as you look forward on this issue here, you must, if you have time, walk around, visit, get a memo out to my colleagues on what you anticipate you'll say on Wednesday. There'll be a full hearing in City Council on your department. We will invite anyone who sent us a communication or interested in the parks. Madam Clerk, anyone who testified will be invited to come and comment. There'll be another public testimony there. I think it would be helpful, though, because these are very helpful, if we create one that says what you vision a future rec center, what you vision the hours of operation, will the rec center be open? It won't be open from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Or will it be open from noon or 11 to 8 or daylight savings times? How are we doing with the seniors? What are we doing with the senior centers? Because one of the different challenges you have, which not everybody understands, the library can operate to 8 o'clock at night. They know that, and they could push it back to midday. But for a rec center that shares a senior facility, they come at 8, 9 in the morning. And maybe they go home at 2, 3 in the afternoon when children come to the park. So there's some dynamics that are different in your facility that makes it unique, that has to be articulated to see how you keep it open.
That's correct.
I was a youth service director for LA Unified. I wanted to originally be a firefighter. I did pass the test. I took it at Hollywood High. Mr. Zine makes fun of me all the time. I say, just goes to show you what LAPD do. They'll take anybody like Zine, but that's another story. With that being said, I wanted to be a school teacher. There are no school teachers opportunities in the mid-'70s when I finished college. But I was the youth service director, and a variety of leagues came in. This is where your concept of PALS and ASYO and others came in. They would use the facilities. I was the manager of the school plant operations from 5 in the evening to 10 at night. Do you envision that type of scenario for some facilities, that you would not have necessarily a recreation staff, but you would have a director of a facility that would be working there at that moment to be in charge of the facility, but yet ASYO would be out on the field? A young lawyers basketball league would be in the gym, and a karate class in the community room. Do you see that type of
That's the only way we're going to be able to continue.
That's the only way you're going to do it.
Going forward is
Yeah.
through partnerships with groups, large and small, to put on a programming that we can no longer afford.
And you mentioned a great opportunity about qualified service providers. Does council need to take an action to try to ask that the qualified service providers, you don't have a list of them per se, right? Now,
We've had a lot of interest when this issue came up from a lot of groups throughout the city. We are contacting those groups. We will sit down with those groups. We'll make recommendations to our commission. I'm not sure if it needs to come to full council or not, but we will work with the individual council areas. If we can do this, we'll bring it to our commission.
Yeah, is there anything we could do, this committee, to help that and to alert those providers, whether it's boys and girls clubs, whatever the organizations are, and a legal non-discriminatory factor that they be included in the opportunity to help and provide service for that? With that being said, a couple of people who I know had earlier meetings did want to address themselves. They didn't have the benefit. They just walked into the room. We're nearing the completion of this presentation right now. My colleagues, Mr. Wesson and Mr. Reyes, had to move to their next meetings. We could do two things. We could take public comment, because I know two folks just walked in here, if they wanted to address anything, or I'll be here, Mr. Buckley will be here. We can conclude this meeting if you want to have any interchange or continued discussion.
If I may,
Yeah.
your point, Councilmember LeBon's is well taken. Please, send out the word. We're open for business. We need your help. Give them my name, give them my phone number, and we will sit down. I'm going to set up a group that's going to be doing nothing but establishing relationship and partnerships going forward.
Good, so that would be a great thing. That would be a good thing. Very important thing. Mr. Hall, I know you just came into the room, and not having the benefit of hearing everything, you would love to express yourself. And I am sorry, ma'am, I don't know your name. If you'd want to... Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Labange, Councilmember Labange.
Call me Tom.
Carlisle Hall. I apologize. I just caught the very last few minutes of what was being discussed, and I am on the Board of People for Parks, co-founder of People for Parks, and we would certainly do whatever we can to assist you, your committee, to assist the department in terms of working out relationships of the kind that you're talking about. It's essential that we, more than ever at this point in time, try to develop those relationships because of the budget crisis. This is a way to expand the resources of the department through those kinds of public-private partnerships. And those, wherever we can find them, we would, of course, encourage them.
I appreciate that. This report was given by Ms. Sutkin of your staff, who is on to another meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Muckery, we're going to formally refer this to you. This is People for Parks report. If you could consider any of those objectives, that way to enhance that. And also, if your remarks are concluded, Mr. Hall, I wanted to ask Mr. Scholl one question. Yeah. One issue we have with all the bonds that have been passed for improvements, you're in charge with building the parks. What's going to happen to you and your function? Not you personally, but your function.
Well, hopefully I'll survive this.
Yeah.
But, what will happen to specifically the
Like
facility?
in North Hollywood, there's a park that I want to get built, I've just picked Tierra Park. How much will that be set back?
Well,
Like a conceptual thing, because staffing is cutting all facilities.
we have to be, I think we've been remained very aggressive in increasing park space. That's proven by Prop 84 with submitting 38 applications for new parks, and your committee supported that. But we're going to continue to look at that. What we're trying to do in planning is just try to be smarter about how we design the parks. And that goes into what types of facilities you put in parks to both meet the needs of the community, but also to decrease maintenance. That's really where our focus has been on.
Through modern technology.
Through
Like the accessible playground adjacent to Pan Pacific Park, known as Renee's Place.
Mhm.
That cut down the maintenance of sweeping the sand off those type of things.
Huge point.
Now-
It's a huge point. It's
Right.
exactly things like that. Kids really enjoy the sand in the playgrounds, but what we're trying to do is put more resilient surfacing in because of that issue. It's very time-consuming to rake those playgrounds every day.
Right.
But at the same time, leaving some sand for the kids to enjoy.
Right.
But there's many other things with the types of plants that we put in, the types of trees that we put in. We're just recently getting ready, in fact, in a number of your parks, which I'll be talking with you about, we're going to install some solar-powered trash cans. You see them around downtown. Those trash cans do not need to be emptied as frequent because they're powered by the sun and they actually compact. So they hold more trash. We have to be careful with the weight of the trash, but there's just little things like that you can do. It's going to be a combination of a bunch of little things that make the difference.
Correct. Now, how about the engineers and et cetera? I got a 3-page memo about engineering. Are you staffed well enough to handle that?
Well, we could. No, we're not nearly staffed to what we could be. We're, in this financial, in this crisis that we're in, I wouldn't say work has slowed at all. It's probably increased. doing many park improvements across the city using Quimby funds, and I don't nearly have the staff that I could use to keep.
But is there a duplicate of efforts between the Bureau of Engineering and Planning Section?
No, there's we have taken a step beyond just advanced planning, and I'd be just be perfectly honest with you. I mean, Bureau of Engineering's taken a number of hits with the loss of employees, architects, engineers, landscape architects, so forth, as we have. There is more work than any one of us can do. So there is no duplication of efforts. In my mind, we're very well coordinated.
And is there any work that can't get done because
there's lots of work that can't get done.
that cannot get done,
Right.
but that jeopardizes the funding?
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of that in Proposition 40, with deadlines that are coming up on grant funds that need to be spent.
Right.
And that does cause us to shift resources from current active projects to make sure that those projects get done on time so that we don't lose those funds.
Mr. Mucker, I just want to say, when you make your report to council, may I suggest you focus, as you did this morning, in that, but at the same time, hook into this very big issue of the future building of the park system and how it will be stalled by not just your challenges, but the challenges of the Bureau of Engineering and other parts of city government, because the council has to really see that so they know what options may be available there. And any kind of graphs or any PowerPoint, I think it's very effective to share that and to repeat it. You're in every neighborhood of the city of Los Angeles, more than any other department. There's 105 fire stations, there's 73 libraries, there's 417 parks. You're everywhere, everywhere. And so this is something that has to be articulated, because many council members work real hard on their park advances, and then all of a sudden turn around and be stalled, can't get built, or you run out of, your time expires from the grants, will be a critical loss. So if you could prepare to address that as well. And Professor Foley arrived late from school at Cal State Northridge. You could go to the attendance office and get a slip, Jack. We'll let you in here, but I know you filled out a card, so if you could gather your thoughts, and I'd like Mr. Muckery to hear Mr. Foley speak. Jack Foley.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. I'm a little out of sorts here in terms of the subject matter, but I guess I would say that...
Here's what I would just suggest, because I've been to your conferences, and your executive director represented you well. Speak your passion, what you see as the challenge, that because Recreation of Parks is not getting the support necessary to do what it needs to do as far as what parks mean for Los Angeles.
Thank you, Councilman. To me, the essential mission of this department, it has been in its history, is its neighborhood rec centers. And the neighborhood rec centers, I think, have to be a priority. They hold neighborhoods. They protect children. We're a big exponent of the thin green line of keeping kids involved in constructive activity, keeping them out of gangs. We think this is going to really hurt the safety, and in the community policing, it's the parks that provide the community. Now, I think there has to be some priorities laid, and I would certainly emphasize the priorities ought to be in the high-need neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods. We've got to find a way, an equity or parity, to keep those parks open and functioning. I was a consultant to Mayor Bradley in the early 80s, and the dead parks of Los Angeles, and the dead parks were public parks that weren't maintained. Any public park, especially in a tough neighborhood, a challenged neighborhood, that's not well supervised, becomes a place where crime takes place. So these are very, very important issues. I would think that they are totally germane to the city mission and ought to be protected. The other thing I guess I would say is that I think the recreation parks is being treated in a disproportionate way. I mean, they're looking at proprietary functions. They're asking for water and power funds to go back. They're asking for health and retirement benefits to go back to the city. The department doesn't have those revenue sources to do it. It looks like on the departments that are off the table in terms of being cut, that Rec and Parks is hitting a major, major share. People are just starting to discover this now. And I've been out to El Sereno, I've been out to Expo Park, and people are coming forward with unbelievable statements about the need for those parks. In a heavy recession, the last thing we want to do is hit the people that need it the most. And so I guess the big thing I would emphasize is providing supervision in the high-need parks and leaving a staff so we can rebuild and go forward.
Thank you very much. Some of that was discussed by Mr. Muckery, that his plan is to make sure there's absolute equity throughout the city, create partners with other organizations, boys and girls clubs, police athletic leagues, LA Unified, etc. But to try to, because we're not certain on what he's left with, his bench, I use the Tommy Lasorda analogy to look around to see who's there. He doesn't even know who's on his bench right now because of the turmoil of this budget process. Once that is found, to make those right decisions to continue in this effort for our park system. But thank you, Professor Foley, for your work, and Mr. Hall for your great work, and Mr. Mike Scholl for your great work. But it's real important on Wednesday to articulate your aspect, because that's the future, and the real current aspect of what's going on. We will also, Ms. Schechter, make sure we notify everyone, including the neighborhood councils, of the hearing in council, so that we could go. It'll be at 10. Is there any other cards, Madam Clerk? This completes today's agenda. This will be in City Council on Wednesday, the 31st of March. This is hereby adjourned.